Perfect. And these Q&A sessions are really intended to be just a very informal, friendly, kind of open setting in which people can ask any questions. Sometimes it's easier if you have a specific question that kind of relates to you specifically. It's easier to ask, somebody who knows in person, live in real time, rather than emailing back and forth about it. So that is exactly what these sessions are for. And you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask a question, or you can pop a question into the chat as well. Lots more people joining in. Let me go ahead and disable the waiting room. There we go. So yeah, you are welcome to interrupt anytime and unmute yourself, ask a question, pop a question into the chat. And why don't we just do a quick team intro? I kind of very briefly gave a very brief introduction of everybody, but Michaela, why don't you go first?
Sure. So, like Yenny said, I'm the program director here, and I also run the in-person program that Sarah and I run up here in upstate New York. I'm a yoga medicine therapeutic specialist at the 500-hour level and a NASM certified personal trainer, and I've been working with with women with osteoporosis for about 5 years.
And you're a nutritional therapy practitioner as
Yes,
well.
I am also a nutritional therapy practitioner.
You have so many certifications. Kenny, you want to go next?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Ken Rhodes, or Coach Ken, whatever you prefer. I'm a certified personal trainer as well, and have been working in the in-person classes with Michaela and Sarah for the last 3 years or so, and been coaching cohorts with Kari for the last 2 years. And yeah, super excited to get to hear some of your questions and look forward to interacting with you more.
Thanks, Kenny.
Mhm.
Karen?
Sure. Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Karen Weinstein. I am a certified yoga teacher at the 500-hour level. I'm a corrective exercise specialist, and I am also a certified personal trainer. I've been working with women with osteoporosis for about 5 years also.
And I'm Yenny. I'm the founder and CEO here at Kari. I am overall really proud of the incredible team that we have here. They have such an incredible depth of expertise as well as broad expertise across many movement modalities, which I feel is what allows us to provide this really balanced, comprehensive approach to not just bone density, but fracture risk reduction, which I'm sure this will come up over the course of the session, but it's a very complex thing and not just about bone mineral density. So before we dive into questions, we've people email in their questions. We have questions from social media. I did want to mention one thing, which is that May is the Bone Health and Osteoporosis Foundation's Osteoporosis Awareness and Prevention Month, which is a month-long campaign to raise awareness of osteoporosis. And we are hosting a couple of free events in collaboration with the BHOF as part of this campaign as well. So I'm going to put a link into the chat here. This is a free webinar that Karen is hosting with the Bone Health and Osteoporosis Foundation. It's next Saturday, May the 3rd. It's completely free. It's at noon. And we're going to cover a lot of, I imagine, things that are going to come up in this session as well. But we know there's a lot of conflicting, contradictory, or just vague advice out there about what is actually effective when it comes to improving bone density with exercise. And Karen's webinar is designed to bust the myths around the methods that are not ineffective and yet which are probably quite popular and all things that you have heard of. So it should be a really interesting session. We partly created it because we know that there is demand for this information. We get asked about this all the time. So if you're interested in hearing like the evidence-based take on what the research says works and what the research says doesn't work, highly recommend signing up for the webinar, which, like I said, is completely free. And we will email out a replay as well. So even if you are not available to attend live during the session, you will get a replay afterwards if you register. Cool. So let's get started on some questions. This is one that we got on one of our social media ads recently. It's a video of Michaela demonstrating some strength training movements. And the comment was, "You can't reverse osteoporosis." Michaela, do you want to maybe provide some thoughts on that?
Sure. We actually hear this a lot. We hear many people come to us saying that their providers have said that diet and movement don't play a role in osteoporosis management. And we would like to point to many, many studies that would argue differently. And mainly, we really look at this principle called Wolff's Law, and that states that the bone adapts to the stresses that are put onto it and will become denser and stronger as a result of external load, specifically compressive forces, which I'm sure we're going to dig into a lot more as we get talking today. But there's always that caveat that it's a healthy compression, because I know with osteoporosis, we also are wary of compression fractures. But when we put weight onto the bones in a healthy way, when we're aligned properly and placing the weight in the correct spot to really create the force that we're looking for, that actually does stimulate the bones, the cells in the bones to lay down more bone tissue. So when we're thinking of osteoporosis, what we really want to think of is that we want to outpace the cells that are kind of eating away at the bone with the cells that are laying down more bone. And we do that through exercise, specifically through these really healthy compressive forces.
And it is a bit of a conundrum to wrap your head around, because often people are told, you need to do weight bearing exercise to improve your bone density. And that in and of itself is a really vague bit of guidance, which doesn't like really tell you much about what you should be doing specifically. But then that often comes hand in hand with, you need to be quite careful now, like you're very fragile, and movement is kind of dangerous for you now. And there's often implications that even the compression that results from like carrying groceries or stepping off the curb can be unhelpful. So we totally get that there's a lot of confusion around these topics, and that the idea of compression can feel kind of scary. Um, Karen, maybe you can tackle this one. This one came in via email as well, and somebody also sort of said that they had been told that if you already have osteoporosis, you shouldn't be doing any jumps or weightlifting. So maybe you can talk about how this notion of compressive loading is actually being used in these modalities.
Absolutely. So all of the things that we do in our program, they're all evidence-based. They're all based on research, and not just a little bit of research, a lot of research. And that research states that lifting heavy is really the best way to help maintain or improve your bone density. Your bones like compressive forces, like Michaela was talking about before. So we're talking about something called axial loading, which is putting compression down through the body in the same direction as gravity. So gravity is always coming downward. We're holding weights in a way that amplifies the force of gravity's effect on our body using weights. And then when we add something like impact, whenever we impact the ground, there's an equal and opposite force called the ground reaction force that then comes up through our bones to add more healthy stress to the bones. And when we can incorporate these in a really intelligent way, especially for people who maybe are new to strength training or new to impact training, they're very effective in helping to maintain and build bone.
Great answer. And we've referenced now a couple of times the research that exists to support exercise, and specifically axial loading as an effective bone density intervention. And when we say a lot of research, we're talking like tens of thousands of studies, not a few scattered things here and there. So there really is a lot of evidence around different aspects of axially loaded exercise, including impact and resistance training, and even things like wearing weight vests, which we incorporate into our program as well. Um, Kenny, I'm wondering if you can maybe tackle this one. Well, I know that you can, but this is one. This is another comment that was left on one of our social media videos, and reflects a very common sentiment about strength training with osteoporosis. And the comment was, "Looks very unsafe," but you're there on the front lines with the clients, leading them through their programs, which not only include weightlifting but progressively heavier weightlifting. So maybe you can talk through some of the ways that we prioritize safety here, and why we have a 0% injury rate in our program.
Yeah, definitely. So the program is designed to be 13 weeks in length with 4 strength days, a recovery day, and a yoga day. So during those 4 strength days, we are looking for you to load with weights that you A, have available at home or a commercial gym setting that are within your wheelhouse, right? So we have people who come into this program with zero experience with weight training. So we have suggested weight ranges, which keep you safe, right? So if you're not used to working out, and this is new to you, we're going to have you starting super light with something that's, again, within your capabilities. And over time, we slowly increase that load. This is that theory of progressive overload, which I'm sure we'll talk about at great length in the training today, or the video today. And if you've come into this program with more experience, say you've been strength training for the last 10 or more years, right? So you know you have a better foundation, so you may be able to push a little bit harder than someone else or lift more weight than somebody else in the program. So we always use suggested weight ranges for certain exercises to make sure that people are comfortable and confident. You also have the ability to send us videos of your technique and your form so that we're able to watch you move in real time and additionally respond with an actual video ourselves. And everything is thoughtfully curated to make sure that we have form videos. We have the cues built in by Michaela and Sarah and Yenny, and our safety is our top priority within these movements. So it's all about listening to your body and working within your capabilities.
Yeah, that's a great response, and we actually get this question quite a lot from people about whether, I'm a beginner, I'm completely new to strength training. Will the program be suitable for me? Versus I've been lifting weights for years. Will I get anything out of the program with all the experience that I already have? So first, I would say, like Kenny said, our program is a group program, but it is individually coached. So the whole goal is to meet you where you're at and give you loading and challenge in a manner that is lined up with your current capacity. So if you have weight training and strength training experience, that actually is a huge advantage to you because you can hit the ground running a lot more quickly. You can start with heavier loading and maybe even make more progress over the course of those 13 weeks because you're going to have more to work with right off the bat. Conversely, if you're a beginner, we can start you at body weight so that you're comfortable with the movements and the form and you feel safe and you have that interactive one-on-one daily communication with your coach as well to make sure that everything's feeling good. And the recovery aspect of it is really important as well. And this is why you're reporting to your coach after each workout how you're feeling, what the level of challenge was, how did you recover from the previous workout, because that's what tells them how to instruct and guide you based on how you're responding to the stimulus. Let me go ahead and mute a couple of folks here. Oops. Here we go. So this actually brings up a good second topic to follow on from this concept of progressive overload that Kenny already mentioned. And Michaela, maybe you can talk about this because we've also already mentioned this notion of weight-bearing exercise. And people often think, not incorrectly, that they are doing weight-bearing exercise when they're out walking or dancing or doing other, yoga and Pilates. But yet we know, again, from the research that using those movement modalities on their own is not going to be an effective bone density intervention. So maybe you can clarify a little bit about what's actually needed beyond just doing that body weight exercise.
Sure. So the reason those exercises, walking, dance, anything that isn't actively holding additional weight on or in your hands, on your body or in your hands, um, is because you don't have, again, that additional weight. We have all adapted to the force of gravity on us, especially as the longer that we've been on this planet, the more adapted to it we become. And so when we see that kind of imbalance where we start to lose bone density, it means that we need to put some more stimulus onto the bones in order to create those changes. And the changes that we want are the increased bone density. So what that means is we have to put some sort of external load, meaning dumbbells, kettlebells, weight vest, onto our body so that we can increase, again, that compressive force through the bones that results in us laying down more tissue. So walking, we do get a small amount of impact, but it's not something that our body really responds to as well as something like circuit training where we're switching the exercises frequently. And then we're also, unless you're wearing a weight vest, we're not adding again that additional load. So that's really the thing you want to like put into your head is there additional load beyond the force of gravity in the movement modality that I'm doing? And if there isn't, then we're not going to see those changes to the bone that we're looking for.
Yeah, well, like I think you mentioned in another of our calls, or maybe it was the seminar a couple of weeks ago, about how there's this need to incentivize the tissues to continue getting stronger. Like we need to keep them interested, I think is the phrase that you used. And one thing to consider is that the human body, like any capacity or strength or load tolerance that you have in your body, is very much like a use it or lose it thing. Like your body is very efficient and economical in the sense that if you are not lifting heavy things, your body will decide that it does not need to maintain muscle mass for you to be able to lift heavy things. And it will very happily get rid of the muscle because muscle is a calorically extremely expensive tissue to maintain. And it's the same with your bones. If your bones do not need to be able to resist these compressive loads of holding and lifting and carrying things and jumping, then they will become less dense because that requires less resources to maintain. So there is this like very active need for participation on you as you're the owner of your body, the operator of your body, to keep providing the stimulus so that your body understands like, oh, these are the forces that we need to be able to withstand going forward. But this already prompted a great question in the chat. Michaela, maybe you can tackle this as an add-on. How about moving about, doing housework, cleaning, or pushing a shopping cart?
I mean, that is great physical activity. So I'm obviously very pro like increasing your daily physical activity through things like housework or chores or other things like that. But again, are you getting external load during those activities? And the answer is mostly no, or if it's, maybe picking up your laundry or your groceries, it's not a significant amount of load in the right dose to create a change. So again, you need to add some dumbbells, add some weights into that routine, and housework isn't going to give you additional stimulus to create the changes.
Yeah, thanks for that response, and thank you for the great question. This is one that comes up often. I'm also thinking that this might be a good jumping off point into talking about the direction of the load and the placement of the weight specifically. Karen, maybe you can tackle this because it totally makes sense that when you're pushing a loaded shopping cart that it feels like there is load involved, right? Like you are expending effort to move that shopping cart around. However, it doesn't quite work when it comes to bone density because, Karen?
Because the direction of the load isn't the same as the direction of the force of gravity. That's the short answer. So we talked a little bit about axial loading before. The axis of our body is our spine. So if you think about that as kind of a central column moving down the body, and we want to make sure that the weights we're lifting, like a weight vest would sit on your shoulders, or dumbbells, whether they're held up high overhead or down by your sides, puts compressive forces down on the shoulder girdle, which then puts compressive forces down on everything else that comes beneath. So the spine down through the pelvis, the hips, and down into the leg bones. And it's those compressive forces in the right direction that help to lay down new bones. So when we're pushing a shopping cart, it's something that's vertical. We're pushing it straight ahead with our hands. It's actually very similar to going to the gym and sitting in a machine and kind of pushing a load straight forward. It's just not giving us the load in the direction that we really need it to be in to have the effect that we're looking for on the bones that tend to be most vulnerable when we have something like osteoporosis.
Yeah, great answer. So it's all to do with axially loading the target tissues, which means we want to have the weight placed above the target tissues relative to gravity. And we want the exercise selection and the weight placement also to be in such a way that it's as close to possible as the target tissues, which I will come back to that in a moment because I see we already have a question about the vibration plate. But Michaela, maybe you can talk a little bit. Liz has a great question about after the initial 13-week program, is the same level of intensity and frequency needed going forward to maintain and or continue to grow bone mineral density? Oh, you are actually muted still.
Thank you. Yes, so you will need to continue to provide stimulus to your bones and continue to do that progressive overload that Kenny mentioned a little while ago. So you do want to continue to lift heavier as you become adapted to the weights that you're using. You want to, keep continuing to challenge yourself. Um, However, in our maintenance program, we do drop our workouts down by 1 day. So we go from 4 days a week of strength training down to 3. And that's to give you one, just a little bit more time back in your schedule. And we think of the first 13 weeks of the program kind of like a little boot camp, like you're really laying down the strong foundation. You're investing in that time period to get really committed to the movement practice, to build it into your schedule, to build the skills. And then once you have those kind of foundations in place, we can give you a little bit more leeway on your time. But what I'm going to say is the most important thing overall is consistency. So, if you fall off for a few days or a week or a month, to just get back into it and stay consistent over the long term, being like the rest of your life. So it's not so much about being perfect in the weekly routine of your workouts, but really staying consistent and committed to to training in some capacity that supports your bone health for the rest of your life. So it doesn't need to be the 4 days a week perfect for the forever, but we do need consistency overall.
That's a great answer. And I think the other factor to mention too is that variability, introducing new exercises or different variations of exercises that you've been doing is a great way to add. Like it's about novelty, and that novelty can come in the form of more weight or a slightly different loading pattern or movement as well. And that's especially important for the hips, which are designed to handle loading from a whole bunch of different directions, and they respond really, really well to that. Kenny, maybe you can tackle this one because you already sort of did, and it's always a useful recap. What is the actual format of the program? Is there any live interaction with the coach and participant? Heck yes, there is.
Mhm.
Does someone look at me doing the exercises? Yes,
Yeah, absolutely. So a brief touch on the format. It is digitally delivered to you through a platform that we use. It comes into your platform inbox, and the program is designed for anyone to be able to do it on their own terms. So we all understand some people are part-time, full-time, stay at home. So we wanted to design something that allows you to do this program on your own time. So it is 4 days a week of strength training. It is one active recovery and then one yoga day. So those 2 days that are active recovery and yoga are designed to help you recover from your strength workouts, some down nervous system regulation as well. And we also have that seventh day to be a free day for you to do whatever it is you need to do. So in terms of interaction, we hold basically weekly Zoom meetings throughout the 13 weeks, give or take. And you are interacting with your coach, myself, or Karen. Michaela is also there responding in the app. And you have constant interaction with us based on your needs. You can direct message us, you can email us. And then during the Zoom call, just like this one, you can ask any questions that you have. We can do technique, form, questions about the app. So there's always constant communication with us during that 13 weeks. And then beyond that, in the maintenance programs, there's also communication built in with the coach, depending on what package you're in. So, hypothetically, you could stay in contact with us for the future of your training cycle.
that's a great answer. Hopefully that answers your question, Francis. So there is lots and lots of interaction. In fact, I would say that overall, so we have a very high Google rating. For example, we have 4.9 stars on Google. Even with that, probably the most positively rated aspect of our program is the coach support and the level of interaction. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of context about the degree of support that you're getting. Great question here from AP. Is there an age at which bones will no longer grow or benefit from exercise? Michaela.
We continue to adapt for as long as we're alive. So the answer is no, there's not an age at which you just stop adapting. So as long as you're willing to create new stimulus, you can see adaptations happen.
That's the perfect answer. Those same mechanisms of bone resorption and the laying down of new bone are happening constantly. So it's up to you what ratios those processes are happening at. If you want more bone to be laid down, you need to do this stuff to stimulate that process. So Francis, to answer your question, your coach will see you doing your exercise. If you opt to send them a video of you doing the exercise every day, they will see you every day. Most people don't really feel the need for that. Often they'll maybe like 1 or 2 exercises that you feel a little bit unsure about, and then the weekly Zoom is a great way to get a form check live on Zoom from your coach. Otherwise, there is that integrated video swapping feature on the platform as well. Lisa is asking, do you have a list of equipment you recommend for women, brand, style of weighted vest, types of weights, etc.? Yes, absolutely. So whenever anybody signs up for the program, we send them a very comprehensive onboarding package that includes lots and lots of resources and information on osteoporosis, on our program specifically, and it also includes a very thorough equipment list with direct links to specific items. And when you register for the program, that is also when you will gain access to your coach, who can advise you on specific equipment or weight choices depending on the info that you provided us on your intake form. And maybe we have a movement screen led by a physical therapist in the introductory session as well. So that's a great opportunity as well to ask for recommendations if you have any doubts as well. Oh, great question here. Francis, how do you send the video? It's a built-in integration on the platform. We provide technical support and instructions on how to do all of that when people register for the program. So rest assured that you are given lots and lots of guidance on how to do all of that, and it's designed to be very intuitive. I don't believe that our clients typically experience issues figuring out how to do that. Great question from Lisa. How do you balance the need for weight training and patients who also deal with joint issues / osteoarthritis? Maybe Karen, I see you nodding there.
Yeah, because I was literally just talking to a client today. So we're about 7 to 8 weeks into the cohort that I'm leading now. And over the past, I'd say week and a half, a lot of the people who came into the program with some joint discomfort are starting to notice that that's decreasing as they're getting stronger, because stronger muscles better support your joints and can just help you feel better overall. That's why I was kind of nodding, because I literally, right before I hopped on this call, I was messaging with somebody.
Right.
So yeah, same thing with scoliosis, any kind of joint issues, arthritis, osteoarthritis. Even though those things can cause discomfort in the short term, in the long term, they respond well overall to strength training.
Yeah, great answer. And another really cool thing about joint health that I think is always useful to share too is this concept of synovial fluid. So this is the fluid that kind of fills the joint space and provides sort of a cushion and lubrication for the joint surfaces articulating with each other. So it's really, when we have this phrase, motion is lotion, we're referring to the production and the sort of usage of synovial fluid within the joint. And the cool thing about synovial fluid is that it's produced by the synovial capsule, which is like a tissue that surrounds and encases the joint. And that is what produces the synovial fluid. And guess what stimulates the capsule to produce synovial fluid? It's movement. So as you move more, and this feels kind of counterintuitive, because if you're not moving very much, your joints are hurting. It feels counterintuitive to move more when the little movement that you're doing is already uncomfortable. But like Karen said, there's these long-term benefits that typically our clients report feeling improvements, both with these kinds of specific issues, as well as their overall strength and mobility and balance and steadiness. These are things that kick in within a couple of weeks, which is really wonderful, because the bone density adaptations obviously take a little bit longer. But we overwhelmingly see reports, when people are at their second weekly meeting or their third weekly meeting or their fourth weekly meeting, everybody is already feeling the benefits, like very definitively in those stages. So it's really motivating and good that those kick in a little bit sooner. Thank you for all these awesome questions. Keep dropping them into the chat as you think of things. I'm going to go. Oh, okay. Here's another one that we got via email. Kenny, this kind of is very much in the same vein as what we were just talking about movement being really helpful in the long run. Somebody was asking, what if you have a bad back and osteoporosis?
Yeah, definitely. So it's gonna be a very familiar answer to what we were just talking about. So strength training the back, right? The lats, all the muscles that support the spine, the erectors, having them be stronger is going to give you an overall reduction in pain. And it does depend. There are caveats to that, depending on what is exactly going on with the back. But the program, and I know this question will probably come soon, the program is designed and safe for people who have scoliosis and potential other issues going on, stenosis, things like that. So it's not uncommon for us to see that and work with that. And if things aren't going so well at the beginning of the program, or having issues, we're having pain show up, we have tons of modifications and alterations that we can kind of key into that program and make sure that you feel comfortable and confident while you're doing it.
Yes, awesome, awesome answer. Um, okay, another great question from AP. I think this one is probably for you, Michaela. I hear it takes a long time for new bone cells to grow or increase. Is there any research that shows how long it takes from exercise effort till new bone cells are created? There sure is.
Yeah, Sarah's really good at answering this one, but we do see that you can see changes in the bone growth within about 6 months or so, but it can take up to a year for it to really kind of solidify in the bone tissue and mineralize. Um, in our
Mm.
in-person program, where we have a little bit more long-term kind of data to pull from, we have seen people see improvements in their DEXA scores within a year of doing the program. And sometimes even just shy of a year, we've had someone see improvements. So it's really going to depend on a lot of factors, however. So there's always things to consider, like if you have any endocrine disorders, like thyroid disorders or anything like that,
Mm.
any medications that you're on, your diet, your stress levels, all of these things do impact bone growth as well. So not to say that exercise will not be effective if you have those other factors or those other things aren't kind of like keyed in exactly, but it just might
Mhm.
be a little bit slower person to person or faster, depending on where you fall in those variabilities. But you can expect to see changes within about 6 months to a year. Sometimes up to 2 years is when we really start to see more of those changes kind of compound and take place.
Yeah, I think that this is one of those situations where there's always a lot of gray area. Like the answer is always it depends, and we give that answer a lot in many different scenarios. The other thing to keep in mind is that the 2-year interval between DEXA scans that is paid for by your insurance is largely determined also by the margin of error in the scanning device. That is the amount of time that has been decided collectively is significant enough that the machine can detect an improvement or a change in your bone density. So, in that way, it's a little bit arbitrary, especially because, not to go on too much of a tangent, but we just came back from the World Congress on Osteoporosis, Osteoarthritis, and Musculoskeletal Diseases, which is like a huge yearly conference. It was in Rome this year. And one of the sponsors of the conference was this new medical bone density diagnostic company called Echolight, who have a technology called REMS, which is actually ultrasound based rather than X ray based. Um, their technology is far more sensitive and can, according to the emergent research, pick up improvements in 3 to 6 months. So it's partly a technological thing as well. Like Michaela said, it depends a lot on your unique kind of hormonal and nutrition and genetic makeup as well. But the DEXA is not the end all be all. And Kenny, maybe you can talk a little bit about this because we've already sort of mentioned the fact that the bone density is one part of your fracture risk. And there's all these other variables that our program targets as well. And subsequently, we see really significant improvements in quality of life as too, as well as that comprehensive fracture risk. So Kenny, maybe you can expand on that just a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, Yenny's 100% right. The DEXA scan is one piece to the puzzle, and there are many of them. My favorite one out of all of them is community. So the diagnosis of osteoporosis or osteopenia can make you feel like you're living on an island by yourself. And the beauty of the community aspect is that you feel supported. There are other women and or men who are going through the same situation that you are, and we're all here to seek that advice and get stronger and increase our bone mineral density. So not only is there the actual physical increase in our bone mineral density over time, there's also the community aspect. There's the posture aspect. Now everyone sit up straight, right? Make that change. So the posture aspect is a big one, right? So how we carry ourselves, how our posture is throughout the day will be a big determiner too as well for our overall health. And balance is a huge part of the program too. So we focus on balance. The better the balance, the less likely to fall. Therefore, the more longevity and injury risk goes down. And then obviously the increased muscle mass, which is proven to be a key indicator of longevity. So having increased muscle mass from the training is an added perk. And we already said this earlier, stronger muscles lead to stronger bones. So you calculate all of those added benefits in together, and you have this very awesome kind of holistic additive approach, right? So we get all those things in one program, and I think that's kind of the best part about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much for explaining that so
Yep.
clearly. And another thing to remember too is that we call it the musculoskeletal system, and there is no gap between the musculo and the skeletal part, and that's because the muscles and the bones really are functioning together as a system that cannot be functionally separated. And even on a physiological level, there's so much crosstalk that's happening between those tissues. When you have more muscle mass, from an endocrine perspective, that supports better bone density as well. And then similar things are happening in reverse with the bones being stronger, and that also positively impacting the muscle tissue. And we do know that increased muscle mass is also correlated with better cognitive function, reduced rates of Alzheimer's, better hormonal function, all kinds of different systems in the body that the relationships are so complicated that we've sort of scratched the tip of the iceberg as far as understanding how it all works. But everything seems to indicate that muscle is absolutely key to longevity, and the way to build that is by progressively challenging your body to lift heavier and heavier things. Otherwise it has absolutely no incentive to build more muscle. It's incredibly costly from like a resource standpoint to create that new muscle. So you really need to give those tissues the right like stimulus for them to sort of keep at it. And the posture component is huge. I was going to hand that over to Karen because we actually use the yoga and mobility components of our program for many things, including posture. But we also get these questions pretty often about, a lot of people have seen the Fishman study about how yoga 12 minutes a day can reverse osteoporosis. So I maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So, yoga is beneficial for people who have osteoporosis, but it's not from a bone density standpoint. So, yoga has all of these other wonderful aspects about it. Yoga helps with our balance through improving something called proprioception. So, proprioception is our body's ability to know where it is in space. And for those of you who are watching, I'm going to give you an example. So, I'm going to have you close your eyes and just stick your hands straight out in front of you. And without looking, I want you to touch the tip of your finger to your nose. And if your finger found your nose without your eyes telling it to go there, that's proprioception. So your hand knows where your face is, where your nose is. It knows what speed it can come in at, so it's not going to damage you. And that's what yoga does for us. It actually just helps our body to have a better understanding of where we are in space, and that helps us with our balance. And in addition to that, yoga actually helps with stress reduction. It helps with our recovery from the strength training that we're doing, which Ken alluded to before. And there is some evidence that shows that when we have less stress, the hormone balance in our body is a little bit more conducive environment for improved bone density.
Perfect answer. Yeah, and I think everybody, bone density or not, I think we can all use less stress. I think that's overall universally considered a good thing. Thanks, Karen. While we're on the topic of yoga, this one comes up a lot as well about bending forward. Michaela, maybe you can sort of demystify this very frightening topic.
Sure. So when we think of bending forward, the reason that that becomes a very kind of feared thing with osteoporosis is when we come into spinal flexion, which is when we actually round the spine, it could increase the risk of compression fractures. It's putting more pressure on the front of the vertebra, which is already more susceptible to compression fractures. And then if you add in external load, that again increases that risk again. However, and so we do see a lot of forward folding in traditional yoga practices, but that's actually a really easy thing to modify. Instead of kind of curling the spine and rounding the spine, we just need to learn how to fold forward in a way that keeps the spine in neutral, which is a hip hinge. And so that instead we're kind of, if this is my spine and these are my hips, you're kind of hinging the spine forward and keeping it nice and long as you come forward. And you can do that by placing two blocks underneath your hands so that you raise the surface of the floor up to meet you. And that way you can keep your spine nice and long. And just by taking some modifications in the way that you transition in and out of poses. In yoga, we do tend to be a little bit more lenient about spinal flexion. Within certain poses, for example, cat cow, we utilize cat cow because we think it's a really important movement to maintain the healthy balance of tension around the muscles in the front and the back of the body. It's also a really gentle way to move the spine, which is actually very important for the health of your discs. It helps to kind of give them that synovial fluid that Yenny talked about and keep them nice and plump and juicy by kind of flooding the tissues with lubricating the tissues with that synovial fluid. So cat cow, we do use that in our program as a way to kind of maintain mobility, to support the health of the discs. But we're doing that in a way where we're cueing it to be very gentle, very mild movement, rather than really pushing against the floor and trying to round as deeply as you can into that kind of angry cat position. So within yoga, there's a little bit of leeway, but we would say in general, we want to keep that spinal flexion minimum and at a very gentle level. And for things like transitioning in and out of that forward fold, where you have a little bit more of your body weight in a kind of hanging forward fold from standing, we would just recommend placing blocks underneath your hands and kind of working on that hip hinging pattern.
And I think that there's quite a bit of fearfulness and maybe even demonization of certain movements, like bending forward and even twisting as well. And we take a similarly nuanced mindset and approach when it comes to twisting as well. Actually, one of the very good outcomes of this yoga study that we referenced, which on the whole, if you read the abstract, will give you some very misleading information about the ability of yoga to improve bone density because it cannot. But one of the good things that came out of that study was that it included three fairly deep twisting motions for the spine, and there were no reported injuries associated with those. And twisting is actually, if you have ever done yoga, sometimes the class will end in like a seated twist that you do in both sides, or maybe you'll be on your back and there'll be a supine twist that way. And it can be such a nice and relaxing way to release tension around the muscles of the spine, keep the hydration in the intervertebral discs, like Michaela mentioned. So these are movements that are a natural part of your spine's range of motion, and that doesn't negate the need for caution or being mindful as you're moving through them if you have low bone density. But typically, we really want to avoid a situation where we're like banning or eliminating entire categories of movement that your body is designed to do, because that is typically you will not be set on a good path as far as your long-term function and your long-term strength and mobility and your overall physical capabilities. So the idea is always to be able to incorporate things in a way that feels good, is safe, and allows you to maintain the range of motion and the capacity that you have, including in movements like twisting and bending forward and even a little bit of spinal flexion. But on that note, Somebody also asked, and Kenny, maybe you can handle this one because we just talked about the hip hinging as well. Are there rules to keep from fracturing the spine while lifting weights?
Yeah, definitely. So I kind of touched on this earlier. Working within your means, right? Working with weights that are comfortable and safe for you. And as especially as we start, it is very key that we are. I'm a huge avid fan of listening to your body as you train, right? So it is going to give you the feedback more so than I'm going to be able to elaborate based on your training record. So when you are first starting out, it's very key that we are working with loads that still challenge us, but are well within our reach. And then over time, again, back to the progressive overload, we will continue to load as time goes on. And as your body adapts and your bone adapts, we can add more and more weight to that particular exercise. And uh, kind of right back into spinal flexion. I actually just got asked this question by a client earlier today who's about 3 weeks into the program. And we have cat and cow and a yoga exercise. And they said, I didn't think I can do this. Right. So it goes back to what we just talked about it's all about how we proceed into that movement. How are we executing the exercises? And that's why we think it's so important that we have that video feature. So if you are feeling unsure about how you're moving or how you are moving and reacting in space, proprioception, like Karen talked about, we can watch you move and we can make changes from there. So the more you communicate about how things are going, the better off, the more interaction we can give you in feedback. So it's all about listening to the body, working within your means, and not doing something rash or out of your comfort zone or ability.
Yeah, and typically from a purely practical standpoint, what we're trying to avoid is sudden, forceful, loaded movement into a deep range of motion, which there is no circumstance in a traditional strength training program like ours that would cause you to do any of those things. The whole point is that it's slow, controlled movement that is working both your strength and your active control, your mobility within that range of motion. So, and again, the coaches are there for you on a daily basis to answer these kinds of questions and these queries.
I have a
Um,
second part too to add to that. So
yeah,
all of Michaela and Sarah and Yanni have filmed videos of every single exercise, and there are even modifications that are filmed as well. So we have a massive index of exercises where you are following along with the instructor, putting it onto your TV or your computer or your phone or tablet and following along with the actual exercises. So that takes any of the guesswork out about what is this exercise? What is this exercise? And it allows you to mimic exactly what the coach is doing. Go ahead,
yes,
Michaela.
Oh, and just to tag on to that one, and they're made specifically for osteoporosis. So they're not just, strength training movements that we cue very generally. They are cued for osteoporosis, meaning that we're taking into consideration really making sure that your spine is in neutral. You're not risking any compression fractures with our maybe annoying reminders to check in on stuff like that. So it is really, really specified to the people that are coming to our program seeking help for osteoporosis.
And I'll add to that that one of the other comments that we get very frequently is people commending Michaela for her incredible thoroughness and patience and kindness in her instruction.
It's so true. So thoughtful.
Here's another question that we got via email. Karen, maybe you can tackle this one, and feel free to keep adding your questions into the chat. By the way, we can keep talking uh, for as long as we need to, but we also want to hear from you. So this is one that we get pretty often. Drugs increase bone density, and from what I gather, are mostly safe. Why should I bother with exercise?
Hmm. So first of all, exercise, if if you choose to use drugs for osteoporosis, exercise makes them work better. The osteoporosis drugs can help to lay down new bone. However, they don't know where to lay down the new bone. We do that by using specific exercises that stimulate bone growth at places we know are vulnerable, like the spine, like the neck of the femur, and like the hips. So that's something to keep in mind. And I just totally lost my train of thought. So you're gonna have to ask me the question again.
Oh, it
Or-
was about why to bother with
oh,
exercise when drugs work. Yeah.
Thank you. And then the other part of that is that right now, one of the things that often goes hand in hand with osteoporosis is something called sarcopenia. Sarcopenia is a loss of muscle mass, and there is no drug treatment for a loss of muscle mass. The only thing that you can do to help with that is exercise and eat a really good balanced diet that helps to nourish the muscle tissue that we're trying to grow. So the other thing is that osteoporosis drugs don't do anything to help your proprioception, your balance. They don't reduce your fall risk. All they do is address the bones at the source. So there are a lot of other things you're leaving on the table if you're only doing the drug regimen.
Yeah, you're not getting any of the functional benefits. And I see AP commented that their osteoporosis has been downgraded to osteopenia due to exercise. Yes, that is excellent. Yeah, way to go. That's so cool. And to kind of piggyback off of this notion of specificity that Karen was just saying about like how your body doesn't instinctively know, it doesn't know to send the new bone to like the sites that are the most porous or the least dense. It just does it in this kind of general way. But this comes back around to this like absolutely wonderful and very optimistic and encouraging concept of bioplasticity, which is the fact that our bodies are ready and willing and wanting to adapt and strengthen all the time, based on the ways in which we are stimulating and loading them. So you can think of your different tissues, which like bone is a tissue as well, even though we think of it as like this hard inert thing, but it is a living tissue that is constantly listening for the different signals and mechanical inputs that tell it, hey, we need to be stronger in this part of the bone to withstand these particular forces. So that is exactly what you're doing when you are loading yourself with an osteospecific strength training program that is designed to do this exact thing. It's providing additional stimulus, mechanical input into those areas where we want the bone to be laid down. So if like Karen said, if you are using pharmaceuticals, which is like a completely personal, like we have people that are doing it, are not doing it, are trying to leave it till later to try it later. But there is evidence to suggest that exercise improves the efficacy of the drugs, and there is lots of research that shows that exercise improves your mood, your overall sense of agency, your well-being, your daily function, your independence, your quality of life. All these things that become increasingly important to actively maintain as we get older and as we are all aging, and our bodies tend more towards that pattern of losing stuff rather than like gaining stuff quite as easily. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot about the vibration plate. Um, thank you for reminding me. Um, yes, so coming back to the idea of the load needing to be above the level of the target tissues relative to gravity, you can imagine that in a vibration plate, that is not the case, right? So the load is kind of incorrectly placed relative to the target tissues of your hips and your spine. The other thing that we talked about is that the load needs to significantly change and increase over time in order for your bones to continue responding to it. So that is also not happening. It also comes back to this notion of loading in a way that targets the desired tissue specifically. So again, if we're talking about the hips and the spine, the vibration is all the way down by your feet and is being dispersed through the tissues of your body quite a bit before it even gets to those tissues. So it's something that we tell people, if they like it, feel free to keep using it. If you're trying to be economical with your time and effort and energy, and improving your bone density is your priority, this is not something that's going to give you a lot of bang for your buck, unfortunately.
There was
Question. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Question about nutrition and advice on supplements a little bit ago.
Yes, maybe you can answer about whether we address nutrition or supplement advice, Michaela.
So right now we don't really have a nutrition piece to our program, but that is something that we are actually discussing in the background. So uh, we're actually meeting on Friday, so we'll have more information soon. Um, but we do want to start to include some more nutrition. I can give some very broad answers once you're kind of one of our clients, but it's always with the caveat that I'm a nutritionist, I'm not your nutritionist, so everything I give you is going to be pretty broad, vague in nature, but I can give you some kind of general advice. We also do have a guidebook that is part of your onboarding, and there is some information about nutrition and supplements in the guidebook. And then I do have options for working with me directly if you want more specialized and in-depth support in your journey.
And let me hop in here with a couple of things that will be of interest to anybody concerned with their nutrition. Um, First of all, for our May 7th program, we have a very limited time exclusive offer that the next, I want to say, 10 people who sign up will get a free hair tissue mineral analysis assessment with Michaela, who does this for a living and is amazing at it and specializes in women's health specifically. Typically, these kinds of consultations cost in excess of about $200. If you are one of the next 10 people to sign up, you will get it for free as part of your registration. And that's going to be valid. I can't remember the exact date, but it's in all of our newsletters. So you're definitely going to be reminded. And we also include a video. Michaela explains the benefits of the assessment and what you can get out of it, how the data tells you a lot about your bone health and what you could be doing to optimize your nutrition and your bone health. The other thing I want to flag up, which is not officially been announced yet, but we do have a women's health retreat, a virtual event on June 7th, which is also going to include nutrition lectures from Michaela and another specialized women's health nutritionist in the space collectively, and that'll also have time for Q&A. That is going to be a paid event, but if you look out for the announcement in our newsletter, then you will be getting a special discount for that event. Yeah, so lots of options for getting more nutrition guidance. As Michaela said, it's tricky providing generalized guidance within the context of a group program because people's nutritional profiles and needs vary so much from one person to another. So not the same thing. The same thing does not apply across the board to everybody. Okay, so we have just a couple more minutes. Feel free to drop any final burning questions into the chat. Joyce does have a question about heel drops stomping. Is this also wrong direction? That's a great question. Karen, you talked about this earlier.
No, there's actually a good amount of research on impact training for bone health, specifically things like hopping and how that helps to improve bone density at one of the hardest places to target, which is the neck of the femur. It's the thinnest part of the femur bone and the area that is most likely to fracture when there's a hip fracture. So yes, impact training definitely helps, and that's because the force that you're applying is great enough and in the right direction that it helps to stimulate bone growth at that area.
So that's that ground reaction force that you were mentioning earlier. Yeah. And I think you had a really great Instagram video about this too, where you were like hopping while you were waiting for your toast in the toaster. But she was doing all these different kinds of hops in like multiple different directions, because that's also a really great way to stimulate the bones in like new and novel ways, where they're like a little bit surprised and then they're like, oh shoot, we need to lay down more bone tissue over here. Oh, and thank you, Juliana, our lovely executive assistant, just put the nutrition promo consultation offer into the chat. And yeah, it'll be available until midnight Eastern time on April 30th, or till all 10 spots are taken. And you can get the ball rolling by completing that intake form. The intake form is something that does not in any way obligate you to register at the end. In fact, when you get to the end, registering for a program is one of the options. The other options include leave me alone for now, I'm not interested at the moment, sign up for a newsletter, or schedule a Zoom consultation. So there's lots of different alternatives there. I want to drop in one more reminder about Karen's webinar coming up in just over a week on May 3rd. That's the Busting Myths and Building Bones, Research-Based Solutions for Stronger Bones. We're doing this in collaboration with the Bone Health and Osteoporosis Foundation as part of their Osteoporosis Awareness and Prevention Month. So we're extremely proud and happy to partner with the national leading organization on this and offer some resources through them. Michaela will be doing another session later in May as well on non-negotiable exercise components for bone mineral density. You're going to be definitely reminded about that via our newsletter, which I assume is how most of you got here. And oh yeah, yes. Yes, we do specifically target the hips through loading and heel drops and hopping. Yes, absolutely. So any final burning questions, feel free to drop them into the chat. Otherwise, you will all receive a follow-up email to this session. I think it'll go out tomorrow. It's going to include a replay of the Q&A from today. There's going to be a reminder about the hair tissue mineral analysis assessment in there as well. And I think that there's a reminder about Karen's webinar with the BHOF too. Final note, if you hit reply on any of our emails, it comes directly to me. So send your question if you have one, whatever comes up. If there's something you wanted to ask and then forgot, that's the way to do it. You can just hit reply on literally any communication that you receive from us. And it says that we respond within 3 business days, but usually it's within about a day because of my inbox anxiety. So we do respond very, very quickly. I want to thank all of you for taking time to come and join us today. It's always really nice to connect with our community, and we appreciate you taking time to come and connect with us. Thank you to Kenny, Michaela, and Karen and Juliana working in the background. Thank you, G, for your message. We are really excited to see you in May as well. Thanks so much. Any questions, send them our way. We respond super quickly, and we really hope to see you online at one of our events or maybe in one of our groups. Thanks, everybody. Have a lovely rest of your day, and we'll see you soon.
Have a good
Bye.
one.